Mexican authorities reported that a new flood caused the increase in the water levels in the wells of the El Pinabete de Sabinas mine, where 10 miners have been trapped for 11 days. Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso declared a state of emergency in Guayaquil, the country's second-largest city, after an explosion that left 8 houses and 2 cars destroyed. Kenya's Electoral Commission announced the results of Tuesday's presidential election, calling the victory for Deputy President William Ruto. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Mexican authorities reported that a new flood caused the increase in water levels in the wells of the El Pinabete de Sabinas mine in the northern state of Coahuila, where 10 miners have been trapped for 11 days. The tense situation began on August 3rd, when workers reportedly were excavating one shaft and ran into an adjoining shaft that was full of water, which caused a flood and trapped the miners. Authorities said the unified command of the Interinstitutional Rescue Team reported there was a sudden increase in water levels, making it difficult for rescue works to move forward. They also confirmed that the engineers are working on a new strategy to extract the water from the site. Meanwhile, relatives of the miners who remained trapped demanded the government to ask foreign rescue teams for help to speed up the operation and save their loved ones. Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso declared a state of emergency in Guayaquil, the country's second-largest city, after an explosion that left 8 houses and 2 cars destroyed. The blast also killed 5 people and injured another 16. Government officials said the incident occurred as a part of organized crime. According to Security Secretary Diego Ordóñez, the state of emergency began on Sunday and will be enforced for 30 days. In his Twitter account, President Lasso warned that his year-old government will not allow organized crime to try to control the country. Guayaquil, 270 kilometers southwest of the capital Quito, has seen frequent shootings and killings by members of rival gangs believed to have links to national and international drug trafficking.
In terms of damage caused by this explosion, we have structural damage to 3 homes. On site, we have 3 people who have died, 2 who died today in a hospital in Guayaquil, and 20 injured people who have been located in different health centers.
In Brazil, this Monday marked the deadline for political parties, federations, and coalitions to register their candidates for the positions running in the general elections to be held on October the 2nd. According to the Superior Electoral Court, parties were able to register their candidates for president and vice president of the republic, governors and vice governors, senators and their substitutes, as well as federal, state, or district deputies. The coalitions had until May 31st to formalize their registration at the Superior Electoral Court. Opinion polls reinforce the advantage of former President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva over the current far-right head of state, Jair Bolsonaro, ahead of the next general elections. Panama's government unilaterally closed what it considered to be the first phase of the single dialogue with the country's social, political, and union organizations. The withdrawal comes at a time when they had reached an impasse, given that the social organizations question the fact that the Catholic Church is not allowed to convene and facilitate the dialogue for the Social Security Fund. In this regard, church observers emphasize that they are only acting as mediators in the process, stating that it is necessary to discuss the issues so far addressed with other sectors of the country. Social movements described the announcement as unacceptable, pointing out that they were not notified about the hiatus in the dialogues and denouncing that the 8 points of the agenda agreed upon with the government have not been covered. The new Vice President of Colombia, Francia Márquez, was honored this Saturday in her hometown in southwest Colombia, after taking office as the first Afro-descendant woman to hold the position. Francia's visit had a specific purpose: to receive Mother Earth in order to lead with wisdom the missions she will have in the next 4 years. In that sense, a crowd, mostly Afro, paid tribute to her with drums and traditional ceremonies in a coliseum in the municipality of Suárez, in the department of Cauca. Hand in hand with President Gustavo Petro, Francia Márquez is part of Colombia's first leftist government, and during the meeting with her community, she called for a confrontation with the traditional elites.
It will not be easy. The first government of the people is not going to have it easy, when there has been an elite that has always governed. But we hope to count on you. Take us by the hand to move Colombia forward.
Cuba expressed its gratitude on Sunday and decorated collaborators from Mexico and Venezuela who participated in the battle against the large-scale fire that affected the industrial zone on the western city of Matanzas. In an emotional ceremony, the Order of Solidarity was awarded to 5 experts from those nations who work on the front line on the fight to control and put out the fire at the supertanker base. The Mexican and Venezuelan collaborators received a replica of the machete of Major General Antonio Maceo Grajales from the hands of Army Corps General Álvaro López Miera, the Minister of the Revolutionary Armed Forces. They were also awarded the Friendship Medal granted by the Council of the State of the Republic of Cuba at the proposal of the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples. With a minute of silence, the participants in the meeting paid tribute to those who died in the disaster, considered the greatest technological disaster of natural origin that Cuba has had to face. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. On Monday, South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol offered economic aid to North Korea if it abandons its nuclear weapon program. The proposal was made during the celebrations of the 77th anniversary of the liberation of Korea from Japanese occupation. The South Korean president spoke of a plan to help North Korea economically if that country were to take steps towards denuclearization, which he considers essential to ensure peace in the peninsula. Yoon also sent a conciliatory message to Japan and said he would like to improve ties with Japan to confront common threats.
The bold initiative I envision will significantly improve North Korea's economic situation and the livelihood of its people gradually. That if the North were to stop developing its nuclear program and were to embark on a genuine process of denuclearization.
Meanwhile, North Koreans left flowers next to giant statues of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il on National Liberation Day, commemorating the victory over Japan in World War II and the end of 35 years of Japanese rule in Korea. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida renewed Japan's no-war pledge during a ceremony commemorating the 77th anniversary of its defeat in the World War II. In her first speech as Prime Minister since taking office in October, Kishida said Japan will maintain their determination never to repeat the tragedy of war. Kishida focused largely on the damage Japan suffered at home, the U.S. atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the massive fire bombings throughout Japan, and the bloody ground battle in Okinawa. However, Kishida made no mention to Japanese aggressions in Asia in the first half of the 20th century or the casualties in the region, an omission whose precedent was set by the assassinated former leader Shinzo Abe.
We are still in a world of constant conflict, under the banner of active pacifism. I will devote all my efforts to various problems facing the world by working with the international society.
A United States congressional delegation landed on Taiwan province amid rising tensions with Beijing. The group of lawmakers, led by Democrat Senator Ed Markey, arrived in Taipei, while the de facto Washington embassy in the city expects the lawmakers to hold meetings with the senior Taiwanese leaders, where they will discuss national security, trade, and investment relations between the province and the nation. This delegation arrives amid rising tensions with China, 12 days after the U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to the province of Taiwan. At least 3 soldiers were killed and 3 others were wounded in Syria after a simultaneous double strike by the Israeli occupation forces. A military source reported that around 8:50 p.m. local time Sunday, Tel Aviv forces carried out an air attack with rockets far from the airspace of southeast Beirut against some points of the province of Damascus camp. This aggression coincided with another one launched from the sea against some points in the south of the coastal province of Tartu. The incident triggered the reaction of the Syrian Arabs' air defenses, which managed to shoot down some of the Israeli missiles. Pope Francis on Sunday called for international help for Somalia to fight a deadly drought that the UN says has displaced 1 million people. The 85-year-old pontiff drew attention to what he called the serious humanitarian crisis in Somalia after his weekly Angelus prayer. The people of this region, already living in precarious conditions, are now in a deadly period due to the drought. I hope that international solidarity can respond to this emergency, the Pope said, adding that unfortunately war diverts attentions and resources, but these are the goals that demand the most commitment: the fight against hunger, for health and education. Somalia is gripped by the worst drought in more than 40 years. According to the UN Refugee Agency, more than 755,000 people have fled their homes but remain within Somalia's borders. This, added to those who have fled abroad, brings the total to 1 million.
I wish to draw attention to the serious humanitarian crisis affecting Somalia and parts of neighboring countries. The populations of this region, who are already living in a very precarious conditions, are now in a deadly period due to drought.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. On Monday, Kenya's Electoral Commission announced the results of Tuesday's presidential election, calling the victory for Deputy President William Ruto. The two frontrunners, Raila Odinga and William Ruto, have been neck to neck in the media and official counts. The final outcome gives Raila Odinga 48% of the votes, while William Ruto gathered 50.4% of the tallies. No election has passed unchallenged in Kenya in the last 2 decades, so authorities and the observation missions fear violence between rival factions. Riot police were deployed overnight inside the Commission's heavily guarded tallying center in the Kenyan capital Nairobi after political party agents disrupted the process, hurling rigging allegations at each other. On Monday, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave a speech from New Delhi's 17th century Mughal-era Red Fort, commemorating the 75th anniversary of the independence from the British Empire. In his speech, the high government official pledged to work with vigor to turn a poverty-ridden country into a developed nation in the next 25 years. Modi also said the country will be guided by the ideals of self-reliance and the spirit of international partnership to attain excellence in the science and technology, set up industries, and attain food and energy security. Meanwhile, opponents denounce the Prime Minister's policy of division and church and state as he moves towards declaring India a Hindu state.
And unless we move beyond these barriers of religion, because there are a lot of religious minorities which are suffering in India and caste minorities at the same time. So I think until and unless we are able to rid India, our country, of these superficial, I would say, hierarchies which are becoming more and more real and pertinent with time, I think freedom is worthless.
And the Taliban raised victory cheers on Monday in Kabul near the former U.S. embassy to mark the first anniversary of their return to power in Afghanistan after a turbulent year marked by a major setback for women's rights and a worsening humanitarian crisis. On August 15, 2021, the radical group captured Kabul following a lighting offensive against government forces and the conclusion of the 20-year U.S.-led international military intervention. For the common Afghans, especially women, the return of the Taliban has only exacerbated the hardships. Tens of thousands of girls have been excluded from secondary education, and women are barred from many public offices. Although Afghans acknowledge that the violence has decreased since the arrival of the Taliban, the humanitarian crisis has many in despair. Decades of war, frequent national hazards, chronic poverty, drought, widespread food insecurity, and the COVID-19 pandemic have resulted in millions of Afghans in need of humanitarian assistance that they now lack as the international community does not recognize the Taliban regime. And the shop owners in Afghanistan stated that it's getting harder and harder to do business in the country, with a big sum of the national assets being frozen by the United States. After the Taliban takeover in August 2021, the U.S. blocked $7 billion in the Afghan Central Bank's foreign exchange reserves stored at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Another $2 billion were frozen by the United Kingdom, Germany, the United Arab Emirates, and some other countries. As the people have been struggling, the U.S. has somehow been planning to use half of the frozen assets as compensation for the victims of the September 11th attacks.
Business has become pretty hard over the past 1 or 2 years, and this is especially true for the past 8 or 9 months. People's businesses has seen some problems, and although the security situation has seen some improvement, it's getting harder to make business operations. The U.S. needs to understand that assets frozen by them are money of the Afghan people and the country as well. It is money of all the entrepreneurs in the country, and it relates closely to the economic system of a country. Every Afghan has been affected by such wrongdoings of the U.S., and we are hoping that such assets could be unfrozen so our people could have a normal life.
Now we move on to other topics. Climate change in the northeastern United States has generally meant weather, but this summer has revealed the cumulative impact of a drought that has left the fields without weeds for cattle to graze. Farm grasses generally grow more slowly in the late summer as the weather warms up, but this year the grass is really struggling to recover after the summer grazing. According to local producers, similar conditions have not been experienced for at least 20 years. Meanwhile, the governor of Rhode Island issued a statewide drought advisory with recommendations to reduce water use, and the state has been informed of about 50 dry wells since 2021.
We had a very dry spring in April, May, and June, although we had some limited rainfall here and there. But normally, by the first week of August, these pastures would be quite lush and green. However, the cattle have already grazed here before May, and are now on their second rotation. And as you can see, there is very little grass growth.
So we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.